I've killed very few. In my 20 years in the Roman army, I probably have the lowest count. Not because I'm a coward, but because my job is different, and it's more crucial than any sword. Do you know what truly made Rome great? No, not bravery. Everyone had brave warriors, the Germans, the Gauls, the Parthians. It was intellect, a cold, precise engineering calculation that transforms the impossible into the inevitable. That is what Rome truly is, and that is what I dedicated 20 years to. Don't understand? Fine. Here's a challenge for you. You have 20,000 soldiers. Facing you are 50,000 Germans, hungry, enraged, who know every tree in this forest and are ready to die today. What do? Attack in the open field and you're dead. I'll bury you myself. Retreat, and they'll follow, and you'll still be dead, just 2 days later, instead of 1. Wait for reinforcements? They'll arrive in a month. The Germans will be here tomorrow at dawn. If you're foolish, you won't win that battle. Or you might win, but you'll lose so many men that you'll have no one left to fight with. I've seen such commanders. I've buried them. And then the barbarians who defeated them would come to our cities. What they did to our civilians is not hard to imagine. But if you're smart, you do what I did. You think, and in a single night, you transform an open field into a fortress from which those 50,000 will never dislodge you. And they come to you. You don't go to them. On your terms. On ground you prepared in advance, while they slept. My name is Lucius Cornelius Fuscus, sapper engineer of the 10th Legion. I am the man who championed the Roman army's greatest weapon, intellect. The cities I took without a frontal assault. One morning, the gates simply opened on their own, because inside, there was no food, no water, and no will left. Now, I will tell you what is not spoken of in triumphal speeches or textbooks. What my ancestors conceived and what I perfected. What armies still use today, 2,000 years later. Siege warfare, using Alesia as an example, from the inside. Let's start with a question everyone asks, yet almost no one knows the right answer to. Why a siege, not an assault? An assault is when you lose thousands of men in a few hours. Walls, archers, boiling oil, stones from above. Even if you take the city, you'll pay for it with so much blood that the next campaign becomes impossible. No one left to fight? No one to march with? You have an army, but no soldiers? A siege means you spend time, but you preserve your men. Rome always had time. But here's the trap that everyone who thought a siege was simple fell into. You surround a city and wait. While you sit and wait, help is coming for the besieged, a relief army. And then you're caught between two fires, the city ahead, the army behind. That's not a siege. That's a cauldron, and you're in it. That's exactly the kind of trap anyone else in Caesar's position at Alesia would have fallen into. But not Caesar, and not me. Alesia, 52 BC. Vercingetorix, a clever, dangerous Gallic chieftain, cornered on a hill with 80,000 warriors. Outside, a relief army of 250,000 men is approaching. Caesar has 60,000, 1 against 4, from 2 sides simultaneously. What does Caesar do? He builds 2 rings, simultaneously. The inner ring faces the city. The outer ring faces outwards, towards those coming to relieve the siege. You besiege the city, while simultaneously defending against the external army. This was called circumvallation and contravallation, 2 Latin words that represent the most audacious engineering feat of the ancient world. The inner ring was 17 kilometers, the outer, 21. 38 kilometers of continuous fortifications built in a few weeks in the Gallic forests by 60,000 men who were simultaneously on active duty. I'll tell you how it was built, layer by layer, because a ring isn't just a ditch and a fence, it's a system, each element of which kills or delays independently. Break through one layer, and you hit the next. Break through the second, and you're in the third. By the time you reached the legionaries on the rampart, you were already wounded, exhausted, and half your men were left behind. We always started the same way, with reconnaissance and water. Water is first. Always first. Cut off the water, and the city is yours. It's only a matter of when. A person without water dies in 3 days, without food, in several weeks. The math is simple and brutal. Our engineers first sought out where the city got its water, a river, springs, wells outside the walls. We dammed rivers upstream. We filled in or diverted springs. We controlled wells outside the walls. But here's a trick few know. We didn't always cut off the water immediately. Sometimes we left it, and we watched. Because people didn't just go to the water source outside the walls for water. They went to pass messages. They went to sneak people out through secret passages. The water collection point became an intelligence hub. You sit, you watch, you listen, and you learn more about the city than from 10 prisoners. Then came the first layer of traps, far from the ditch, 200 to 300 meters in front of the main line. Here, the ground ceased to be merely ground. Wolf pits, scrobes, pits about an elbow deep, smaller than a foot in diameter, arranged in a staggered pattern, 5 rows deep. In the center of each was a sharpened stake. Covered with branches and turf, they were completely invisible at night during an attack. A man falls in, the stake pierces his leg. He doesn't die immediately, he screams. A screaming man who can't stand stops everyone behind him, panic in the dark. The assault breaks before it even reaches the ditch. It wasn't repelled, it broke itself. Beyond the wolf pits were stimuli, iron hooks with 4 points, forged so that no matter how they landed, one always pointed upwards. Scattered invisibly in the grass, a horse stepping on one would rear up, throwing its rider. A cavalry charge would shatter in a minute. An infantryman in soft boots would get iron in his foot. Not fatal, but he'd be out of action. And anyone helping him would be too. Next came the lilies. Now these were serious. Conical pits, 1.5 meters deep, with a sharpened stake in the center. The sides were reinforced with branches to prevent collapse. On top, camouflage. 8 staggered rows. A man who fell into a lily would be impaled and unable to escape on his own. It wasn't a trap. It was a death sentence. At Alicia, we set thousands of them. The field before the ditch looked like an ordinary meadow. It was not. Now, the ditch. And let me tell you, there wasn't just one. The first ditch was wide, 5 to 6 meters, with sheer walls. If possible, the bottom was filled with water, creating a canal that couldn't be jumped or waded across. At Elysia, there was a nearby stream, which we diverted into the ditch. The Gauls looked down from their walls and understood. You wouldn't simply cross it. Between the first and second ditches was a strip of land about 5 meters wide, seemingly a respite. No. This strip was further strewn with stimuli and stakes. A man who crossed the first ditch found himself here, and in another trap. Exhausted, wet, and once again under arrows. The second ditch was narrower and deeper, V-shaped in cross-section. Why V-shaped and not rectangular? Rectangular is easier to dig, it's true, but a V-shape is smarter. A man who falls in gets stuck as if in a vice. The narrow bottom prevents him from standing upright. The walls beneath his feet crumble. Escaping a V-shaped ditch under fire is almost impossible. You stand there, while archers on the rampart calmly shoot at you. Beyond the second ditch was the rampart. The rampart wasn't just an earthen mound. The soil from the ditches was piled inwards and compacted with proper slopes, an angle of about 60 degrees. Why that specific angle? Experience proved it. A shallower slope is too easy to assault. A steeper one collapses on its own. At 60 degrees, your feet slip, there's nothing to grip, and everything imaginable rains down on you from above. On the crest of the rampart was a palisade, but not just straight stakes. That's a wall you can climb over. These stakes were angled differently. One pointed directly at you, a second from below upwards, a third from the side. To jump over such a palisade meant impaling yourself on one of them, guaranteed. Mathematically guaranteed. And here's a detail I particularly love. Every 30 meters along the palisade, there were specially weakened sections. Nothing visible from the outside. From the inside, the legionaries knew. This is a quick exit. At night, while the enemy was climbing an adjacent section, a small detachment would exit through such a passage, strike their flank, and return within a minute. A snake strike. Hit. Withdraw. And the enemy doesn't understand from where or to where. On the rampart, every 100 meters, there were towers. Wooden, 2 or 3 stories high. They were built quickly from pre-cut timbers, like a construction kit assembled on site. From a tower, an archer could see the entire field in front of the line with almost no dead zones. The towers intentionally protruded beyond the palisade line to fire along the wall, covering those who had already reached it and were trying to climb over. On the towers were ballistae. Not catapults. A ballista operates like a giant crossbow, firing flat and accurately for 200 to 300 meters. A single bolt could pierce through 2 or 3 men standing in a line. While a catapult launched a projectile in an arcing trajectory to hit a general area, a ballista pinpointed its target. The column commander, the man with the battering ram, the one carrying a ladder. Remove the commander, and the column stops. That's also mathematics. Now, about what happened underground. Almost no one talks about this. The besieged would dig mining tunnels, aiming to reach beneath the base of a tower or rampart and collapse it. We would dig counter-tunnels. A war of moles. Blind, in the dark, underground, where you could hear the enemy digging just meters away and you tried to reach them first. How did we determine where they were digging? We'd place a basin of water on the ground. The digging would create vibrations, and the water would react before the ear could detect it. An experienced engineer would determine the direction and distance from the ripples. Then, we'd dig to intercept them. We'd meet underground with torches and short swords, a different kind of fight, confined without formation, one-on-one in a burrow. If we couldn't intercept them in time, we'd collapse their tunnel from above if we knew its exact path, or we'd pump in smoke, wet wood, dung, damp grass. The smoke would fill the tunnel and drive out everyone inside. Key sections of the rampart were built on piles. Even if a tunnel reached them, collapsing piles was incomparably harder than simply undermining the soil. This bought time, and time in a siege is everything. Along the entire line of fortifications ran an internal road, exclusively for us. Flat, compacted, wide enough for 2 wagons to pass. Along it, supplies, tools, wounded men, and fresh troops moved continuously. When the enemy pressed on one section, reserves were rushed there in minutes via this road. It was the circulatory system of the entire line. Without it, the ring wouldn't have worked. This is precisely what saved Caesar at Alesia. When 250,000 Gauls from the outside and 80,000 from the inside attacked simultaneously, reserves flew along this road to where they were needed. The same legion was moved from section to section 3 times in a single day. This was only possible because the road had been laid in advance. And finally, about psychology. Because a siege isn't just physical pressure, it's pressure on the mind. A good engineer thought about this as carefully as they did about the ditches. When the besieged watched from their walls as the ring grew around them day after day, it broke their will in itself. Not because it was terrifying, but because it was clear. You see yourself being walled in, and you understand. This is the end. The only question is when. At night, we made noise along the line. We shouted, drummed, simulated attacks, without actually attacking, simply to keep them from sleeping. For 1, 2, 3 weeks. A person deprived of normal sleep for several weeks cannot fight effectively. Their hands tremble, decisions are slow, fear mounts without reason. We knew this. We exploited it. Sometimes we didn't kill defectors. We fed them, questioned them, how much food, where the command post was, if there were diseases, and then we sent them back. Deliberately. A man who returned and reported that they were fed and unharmed outside was the best possible agent of demoralization. Alesia held out for several weeks. The city surrendered. Vercingetorix himself rode out of the gates, fully armed, sat before Caesar, and removed his helmet. 250,000 from outside did not break through. 80,000 from inside did not escape. 60,000 Romans caught between two fires endured, not because they were braver, not because they were fiercer, but because they thought better. That is what Rome is. That is what intellect in warfare means. And that is what I dedicated 20 years to.